Hello, my name is Christopher Ramam from English class on Thursdays from 5 to 8. From 5 to 8. And my first topic of what I learned in Unit 8 were the inventions and discoveries, where we saw some examples right there of the TVs, wheels, and 3D printer. We also saw some important inventions and discoveries like antibiotics, internet, and last but not least, the water purification. We also talked about the unreal conditions, and we saw that this sentence described how the name says unreal conditions. We saw some examples of this using the simple past tense, or where if in the if a clause, like if I wanted cutting edge phone. Another example was using would or could, and another example is we could study together. I also remember we talked about the contractions with D in spoken English. We saw the different pronunciations of the spoken contradictions of would and did and had. Something I remember we saw in Unit 8 was that we would describe new inventions, where we had a chart of categories where we had to choose the new inventions. Thanks. I remember I chose like 5 of those examples, inventions, and were for safety in the car, for eating in or snacking, to get in shape, for preparing for tests, and for relaxing at home. We also saw the creation of antibiotics that were created by Van Leeuwenhoek in 1675, and the importance of it in nowadays for the prevention of serious infections. The last thing I remember we saw were a bunch of pictures of the use of the wheel, where we saw how human beings used to use the wheel for a bunch of things. And some inventions were the horse-drawn carrier, the potter's wheel, and the automobile. And that is what I learned in the Unit 8. Alright, so now I'm gonna talk about what I've learned in Unit 9, where we saw the controversial issues, where we test ourselves how political we are. We also saw a chart of vocabularies, where we had to read them and then listen after that. We had to repeat them, and some examples were politics, vote, an election, a monarchy, and more examples, but I don't remember. We saw a photo story of Paul and Carlo, and we had to restate a few sentences they had in their conversation in the photo story. Some sentences were, "What are you up to these days?" This means that what have you been doing lately? Another sentence is "No worries," and this one means don't worry. We saw the non-count nouns that represent ideas, where right away we had a grammar practice choosing the correct noun, form of nouns, and verbs. Some examples were our advice to you is to avoid discussing politics. Both candidates have programs for health and education. We also saw some vocabs, and some of them were conservative, and this one means preferring to continue to do things as they have been done in the past rather than risking it. Radical means supporting complete political or social change. We saw some grammar. We saw more grammar, and in this page we saw the verbs followed by some objects and infinitives. Some examples of these type of verbs were advise, allow, cost, invite, tell, and persuade. We also saw in this unit a topic about the proposal of solutions to global problems, and we read a chart with the most frequently mentioned problems globally, and these were the corruption, poverty, terrorism, racism, and discrimination. And well, that's what I learned in Unit 9, and now I'm gonna talk about Unit 10. The topic from the Unit 10 is beautiful world. Starting up, we have some vocabs where we had a little map of the vocabs we have to say it. Some of those vocabs were a gulf, a bay, an ocean, a mountain range, and there were more examples, but I don't remember right now. We saw a photo story where we had to read and listen to tourists talking about Costa Rica, and then we had to write some statements they had in our own way. Some examples where you don't want to miss it, where it means that you have to watch it. What a coincidence, and it means for real, because we came from there yesterday. We saw a chart where we had to name places. Where we have to name places we know from the following geographical features. For example, an ocean, the Pacific Ocean, a gulf, the Gulf of Mexico, and I don't remember more examples. We also saw some words, voiced and voiceless, where we had to listen them and then read and listen and then repeat them. Some voiced words were there, this, southern, and the west. Some voiceless words were thanks, think, north, and south. And that's what I've learned in Unit 10. I hope you like it, and thanks.